What is up, 49er faithful? So today we're going to be talking about the San Francisco 49ers free agents that are free agents on the San Francisco 49ers, and do I think that they will re-sign, and who do I think will not re-sign with the 49ers? So let me pull up the free agents here for the 49ers. So starting off, number one, Randy Gregory. He was acquired from the Denver Broncos right before the trade deadline a few weeks before. This one's tough, but I do think the 49ers do not bring him back. I think there's some better options out there that they could get that could be a little bit cheaper. Next up, kind of going against to the defensive end spot again, is Chase Young. Chase Young acquired right the day of the trade deadline for a third round comp pick given to the Washington Commanders. I would be shocked if Chase Young honestly is back because I think the team would overpay for him because he was on a Super Bowl and playoff team. So I don't think the 49ers are going to be able to bring back Chase Young. Next up is Sam Darnold. Um, Sam Darnold, I could definitely see coming back to the 49ers. They want to make sure they have that quarterback room. Well, could they bring back Brandon Allen, who might be cheaper, possibly? But I think that they do end up moving on from Sam Darnold, as I do think they re sign Brandon Allen, who's going to be a little bit cheaper, I think. And then I could see them drafting a quarterback late in the draft. Next up is Javon Kinlaw. Javon Kinlaw had a really good year, was able to stay healthy, luckily with the 49ers. And I actually do think they are going to be able to bring him back, even though, some other teams would be interested. I do think he ends up actually returning to the 49ers. Next up on the list is free safety to Sean Gibson. I do think that he is not going to be back with the 49ers. I do not think he's going to sign with a single team, as I do think he will end up retiring. Next up on the list is defensive tackle Sebastian Joseph Day. I do not think he's going to return. I think it was just, more of a signing that they needed some depth because they were starting to have some injuries. Eric Armstead was injured, and then Hargrave was a little bit beat up. So I think that they just had brought him in to have some depth. So I don't think he's going to return. Next up is a linebacker, Oren Burks. I could really see the 49ers bringing back Oren Burks, to be honest. They need that special teams guy. He knows the system now, with Dre Greenlaw out for the year, with the Achilles, I could see them bringing him back, to be honest. I don't think he's going to be very expensive at all. Next up is defensive end Cleveland Farrell. Cleveland Farrell's having a pretty good year. He was hurt though, but I don't think the 49ers are going to be able to bring him back. Unfortunately, I feel like a team, seeing what he was able to do this year, I think that a team would sign him a little bit more money than the 49ers are willing to give, because the 49ers do have to, you know, extend Brandon Ayuk. I think they're going to want to bring back Jawan Jennings for sure. So next up on the list is John Feliciano. I also don't see him returning. He was a pretty good depth piece for the 49ers. Also that whole like Twitter thing with him and Spencer Burford, I don't think the 49ers are going to like that. And I think that he could go to another team um, that needs some depth. I think the 49ers might go in the draft and draft someone early and maybe sign somebody else that's going to be a little bit cheaper in free agency. Next up is defensive tackle Kevin Givens. Kevin Givens has been on the team for a very long time, still a solid depth piece in my eyes, and I think that he's going to return to the 49ers. Next on the list is wide receiver and return specialist Ray McLeod. I don't think Ray McLeod's going to return. Special teams has been an issue. He's dealt with some drops, just doesn't seem to, really have stay positive, doesn't have kind of that trust when it comes to returning the football. So I think that the 49ers may be going a different way. So I don't think he returns. Next up is linebacker Demetrius Flanagan Foles. Been on this team for a very long time. It was a while till they brought him back last year, excuse me. But I do think the 49ers do bring him back. You know, you want to have some familiarity. He's still good on special teams. So I think that the 49ers do bring back Demetrius Flanagan Foles. Next up is tight end Ross Dwelly. Ross Dwelly, another guy that's been on this team, undrafted guy from a few years ago. I think this is finally the year where Ross Dwelly does not return. Could he be a practice squad candidate? Possibly. I just think, obviously you have George Kittle, you have Cameron Latou, who was hurt, but I think that was just anyways going to be like a redshirt type of year with Cameron Latou. Um, was having issues with some drops and things like that. So I do think that they're gonna, you know, have a bigger role for him and trust on the young guy. And then they also have Braden Willis that they ended up drafting, um, who was big in special teams this year. So I think that they're gonna go with the guys that are on their rookie contracts. A little bit cheaper, so I do not think actually Ross Dwelly finally. I don't think he returns. And then Brandon Allen, the quarterback, kind of talked about this before. I do think that they're going to bring back Brandon Allen. I think he's going to be pretty cheap. I think the 49ers clearly aren't going to want to, spend a lot of money on the quarterback, but they have to have a backup. So I think that Brandon Allen does return to the 49ers, and they do end up drafting a quarterback late. Next up is wide receiver Chris Conley. Chris Conley, a lot of practice squad time, but also a lot of playing time. Was clutch in the playoffs. Good veteran to have in the locker room. Could he be retiring? I mean, maybe. He is 31 years old, so he still has a little bit of, possibility. Could there really be a team that's out there that's looking to sign him? I'm not really sure. I think the 49ers honestly could bring him back. Next up on the list is safety and cornerback Logan Ryan. Similar to Sebastian Joseph Day, it's just they had some injuries at the safety position that they needed to add some depth. So I don't think the 49ers are going to bring back Logan Ryan. He was just on a cruise. They needed some depth. I don't think he'll be back. All right, next up on the list is offensive lineman Matt Pryor. Matt Pryor was an interesting signing last offseason. Didn't really do much this offseason. I think that the 49ers will let him go and do not bring him back. Next up is wide receiver Jawan Jennings, restricted free agent. So the 49ers should be able to match an offer from another team if Jawan Jennings receives some, which I feel like other teams will have interest, especially with the playoffs and what a performance he's had in the playoffs. If the 49ers won the Super Bowl, he probably could have been, the MVP, might have actually been the MVP for the Super Bowl. But I think that the 49ers will bring him back again because he is restricted free agent and they can place a tender on him. I think they'd probably place a second round tender on him, which means that if a team does sign him, they have to give up a second round draft pick. Again, this is not an official thing that the 49ers have done, but I feel like the 49ers will be doing that. I'd be pretty shocked if they didn't do that. So I think Jawan Jennings is a big priority, you know, other than Brandon Ayuk. So I think Jennings is going to be back with the 49ers. Next up is guard and offensive lineman Ben Barch, another guy, practice squad guy. Um, could he be a guy that's maybe a futures contract? Possibly. Um, but I don't really know if the 49ers bring him back, to be honest. I think that they're gonna probably move off from him unless that there's no one out there that they really think they could sign. So I'm gonna say that they don't bring him back. Next up on the list is tight end Charlie Warner, and I already talked about this kind of with the roster dwelly. That they have these young guys on the roster. I do think Charlie Warner is back though, because they use him in the blocking game a lot. Kyle Shanahan loves to use him, in the run blocking game, and so I think Charlie Warner does end up returning to the San Francisco 49ers. And rounding off the list is cornerback Terrence Mitchell. I don't think he's going to be back with the 49ers. So there you have it. Those are the 49ers free agents and who I think will resign. So really, I don't see a lot of guys honestly coming back. That there's always some guys that you think they can have back and then they end up not coming back. So there could be some you know shocks that we end up seeing here with some of these players. But again, I think a lot of these guys, either retirement with Gibson, and I think there's going to be some interest for some other guys, some guys that they just ended up having to sign because of injuries. I don't think those guys are going to really be back. So the 49ers, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the depth. They have a lot of places that they're going to have to add depth. They're going to have to, you know, have a starter across from Nick Bosa. How they feeling, about a guy like Drake Jackson now too. So gonna be interesting, to see what the 49ers do in free agency. Just a few weeks away from free agency. Free agency starts on March 11th. 13th is the official day. 11th is when teams can start to actually talk to players, and there'll be news that drops that these guys are signing with the teams, but cannot be official till the 13th. If there's any trades, that same thing gonna happen on March 13th, the official league start of the league year for new date. So thank you guys for listening. Make sure you guys hit that red subscribe button and like the video for me. Let me know which free agents you think the 49ers will bring back in the comment section down below. Make sure to subscribe and turn that notification bell on. Peace out and let's go Niners.